My name is Mabel Thompson. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a customer service supervisor at a tech support center in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not a glamorous job by any stretch, but it keeps my lights on and gives my life a sense of routine. Most days I'm bouncing between angry callers, confused customers, and the small team I manage, people who look to me to stay calm even when everything feels like it's falling apart. From the outside, my life looks perfectly average. I rent a small apartment, live on predictable paychecks, follow the same daily schedule, and try to keep everything together 1 week at a time. Nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary. But 18 months ago, on a day that started out like any other, everything quietly shifted. It was a Tuesday in March, warm, breezy, and oddly peaceful. I was on my lunch break, heading toward the sandwich shop I always went to. On the way, I passed a tiny corner convenience store. I must have walked past it hundreds of times before, without really seeing it. But that day, something made me stop. And then I walked inside. The store smelled like old wood and peppermint, the kind of scent that makes you think of childhood memories you didn't realize you missed. Behind the counter stood an elderly man, late 70s, maybe. Tall but a little bent with age. His white hair was combed neatly, his bushy gray eyebrows gave him a permanently curious expression, and his hands trembled just slightly as he straightened a stack of lottery slips. His eyes, though sharp and blue, missed absolutely nothing. He wore a faded brown cardigan and a checkered shirt. His wedding ring was worn smooth, like it had lived an entire lifetime on his finger. When he noticed me, he smiled slowly, gently. "Well now," he said, adjusting his glasses. "You look like someone carrying the whole world on your shoulders. Bad day." I let out a breathy laugh. "Long morning, but I'll survive." "That's what tough people always say," he teased kindly. "So, what brings you in? A soda? A snack? Or one of these life-changing chances to become a millionaire?" He tapped the lottery display with a smirk. Normally, I would have laughed and walked away. But something about him, his warmth, maybe made me pause. "You know what?" I said. "I'll take a Powerball ticket." His eyebrows lifted. "Oh, going big today. Quick pick or picking your lucky numbers?" "Quick pick," I replied. He nodded seriously, like the moment meant more than it should. "You'd be surprised," he murmured as he slid the ticket into the machine. "Most big winners I've seen? Quick pick. Destiny doesn't wait around for people to make up their minds." The machine beeped, and he handed me the ticket with both hands, like it was fragile. He didn't let go right away. Instead, he held it for an extra second and looked straight into my eyes. "Listen, young lady, if this ticket changes your life, promise me one thing." I blinked. "What's that?" "Don't let money make you lose yourself. I've seen folks win big and fall apart faster than you'd believe. Money's a tool, not a personality." His voice was so earnest that it caught me off guard. "I promise," I said quietly. He smiled again, soft and fatherly. "Good. You've got kind eyes. People with kind eyes need reminders." I tucked the ticket into my wallet. As I headed toward the door, he called out behind me. "And hey, if you win, don't forget Old Harold. I like chocolate chip cookies. Not the store kind, the real ones." I laughed all the way outside. I had no idea that the ticket he'd just sold me would turn my entire world upside down. For the rest of the week, I barely thought about it. Work was chaos, as usual, burnout, deadlines, endless complaints from upper management. Every evening I dragged myself home, kicked off my shoes, microwaved whatever leftovers were in the fridge, and collapsed on the couch. The ticket stayed tucked behind my employee ID in my wallet, untouched and forgotten. Until Friday night. I had just microwaved a sad little lasagna and opened a can of ginger ale when the Powerball numbers flashed across the TV during a commercial break. Absent-mindedly, I reached for my wallet. Let me just check for fun, I thought. There's no way I actually. The winning numbers appeared. 7, 14, 28, 41, 52, Powerball 19. I looked at the ticket, then at the screen, then at the ticket again. My heart started pounding so loudly, it felt like it filled the room. At first, I honestly believed I was tired and misreading. I even turned on a brighter lamp to make sure my eyes weren't messing with me. But they weren't. Every number matched. My quick pick numbers matched exactly. I sat on the couch, so quickly the remote slid off and clattered onto the floor. "No, there's no way," I whispered, staring at the ticket like it might burst into flames. "People like me don't win $57 million. I checked the lottery website on my phone, refreshed it, checked again, held the ticket under the light, rechecked. Still real. Still $57 million. Still my ticket. Every emotion hit me at once: joy, terror, shock, disbelief. My entire body felt electric. My instinct was to call someone: Mom, Dad, Claire, even Alexander. I picked up my phone but froze. How do you tell someone something like this? "Hey Mom, guess what? I'm rich." It felt wrong. It felt risky. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Harold's voice echoed, "Money's a tool. Don't lose yourself." That grounded me more than I expected. So instead of calling anyone, I spent the entire weekend researching. Not silly online tips, real information. Legal protections. Stories from past winners. Genitales. How to stay anonymous. How to set up trusts. How to not lose your mind. By Sunday night, one thing became painfully clear. I needed to keep this to myself. At least for now. Monday morning, I walked into work like nothing had changed. I ran meetings, answered emails, dealt with customers, heated up leftovers in the break room while people fought about stolen yogurt. No one had any idea I was now a multimillionaire. I claimed the winnings through a trust and hired professionals. After taxes, I had roughly $34 million invested, protected, untouched. And then nothing changed. Not on the outside, anyway. Same tiny apartment. Same routine. Same problems. Same paycheck. Same life. Just one enormous secret sitting quietly inside me. And that secret changed the way I saw everything. When Claire stressed about daycare bills, I realized I could erase that burden instantly. When my parents talked about retirement fears, I knew I could fix every worry they had with one transfer. When Alexander talked about wishing he could go back to school, I knew I could send him without blinking. But I didn't say a word. I just listened, nodded, pretended everything was normal. And as the months passed, the secret grew heavier. It's strange how money you haven't even touched, money no one even knows about, can still change you from the inside out. 6 months passed like that. 6 months of pretending. 6 months of watching and wondering, until one question started echoing louder and louder. If I ever needed help, who in my family would actually be there for me? I couldn't ignore it anymore. So, I decided to find out. The test I designed was simple, but it had to be thorough. I would call each member of my immediate family and tell them I was in serious financial trouble. I'd say I'd lost my job, fallen behind on rent, and was facing eviction. I would ask for specific amounts, nothing absurd, but enough that it would matter to someone with limited resources. This wasn't about tricking them. It wasn't about humiliation. I wanted to see their character in a way that ordinary life never forced anyone to reveal. When someone you love is genuinely in need, the way you respond tells you something deep about who you are. I wanted to know, before I potentially upended family dynamics with my lottery winnings, who could actually be counted on when the chips were down. I started with my parents. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious," I said, my voice a little shaky, on a Saturday morning. "I'm in real trouble here." "What kind of trouble, Mabel?" I heard genuine concern in his tone, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself hope. "I lost my job 3 weeks ago. Budget cuts at the company. I've been trying to find something else, but you know the market right now. I'm behind on rent, and the landlord is threatening eviction. I need help." There was a long pause. I could hear Mom murmuring questions in the background and Dad explaining things in hushed tones. "Mabel, that's terrible news. I wish you'd called sooner, but you know our situation. Your mother's medical bills wiped out most of our savings, and we're barely keeping up ourselves. I don't see how we can help financially right now. Dad, I'm not asking for a loan. I just need help, $3 000 would cover rent and utilities for a few weeks while I look for a new job. I know it's a lot, but I'm desperate. Another pause. Longer this time. Sweetheart, I understand you're scared, but you're 33 years old. You have a degree and professional experience. Besides, when you're getting married, maybe this is an opportunity to figure out how to stand on your own instead of expecting someone else to solve your problems. The words landed like a punch. So, you're saying no? I'm saying you need to handle this yourself. That's what being an adult means. I hung up and sat in the apartment for an hour, staring at the wall, letting it sink in. My father, the man who raised me to believe family always came first, had just told me I was on my own at the moment I supposedly needed them most. Maybe he was having a bad day. Maybe Mom's medical bills and their own pressures had drained him of generosity. Maybe Mom would respond differently. I called her the next day. Mabel, honey, your father told me about your situation. I'm so sorry, she said, voice soft. Thanks, Mom. I know Dad said you guys couldn't help, but maybe you could lend me something. Even a little. Anything would help. Oh, sweetheart, I wish I could, but things are really tight for us. Besides, your father thinks this might be good for you in the long run, a chance to learn independence.
Mom, I'm facing eviction.
This isn't about independence. It's about having a place to live. Well, maybe you could move back home for a while, just until you get back on your feet. Move back home at 33? With a secret fortune sitting in my bank account? I can't, Mom. I need to stay in Charlotte for interviews. I just need a temporary loan. I'm sorry, honey, but we just can't. Maybe you could ask Claire. Claire, my sister. Married, living in a nice house with her husband and their kids. Always the family success story. That evening, I called her. Claire, I need a favor. A big one. What kind of favor? I told her everything. Lost job, behind on rent, eviction looming. $3,000. Mabel, I wish I could, but $3,000 is a lot. We have our own bills to manage, she said. I know it's a lot, but I'm your sister. I'm in real trouble. I'd do the same for you if the roles were reversed. Would you, though? When have you ever helped any of us? You barely call. Skip family gatherings. And now suddenly you want $3,000 because you lost a job. Her words cut deeper than she probably realized. All my distance over the years, my introversion, my exhaustion from family conversations about money, had been read as selfishness. Claire, I know I haven't been the most present sister, but this is different. This is an emergency. Look, Mabel, I feel bad for you. I really do. But you're an adult. Adults solve their own problems. Maybe this is a wake-up call. Maybe it's time to get serious about your career instead of drifting through life, waiting for someone else to take care of you. Drifting through life. According to my sister, that's what my normal job and my struggles meant. I hung up. One call remained. Alexander, younger brother, 28, mechanic in a nearby town. Never prestigious, never wealthy, but the kind of person who would give you the shirt off his back. Always quietly there, always. Loyal. Alexander. Hello, big sister. We need to talk. I'm in serious trouble. I told him everything. This time, I let the fear and desperation show, at least the supposed fear. Sis, that sucks. I'm really sorry, Mabel. $3,000, huh?
Yeah.
I know it's a lot. If you can't, I understand. But I've asked everyone else, you're my last option. Look, I don't have $3,000. Never have, probably never will. But let me think. I heard him talking quietly to his partner. Then he said, okay, I've got about $500 in my checking, maybe $700 from my card, without maxing it. That's $1,200. Not enough, but it's everything I can manage. I stayed silent. I know it's not enough, but maybe it'll buy you some time. I can even drive over this weekend and help you look for work. I know some people in North Carolina who might have openings. Alexander, making barely $30,000 a year, was ready to give half of what he had and drive hours to help. The contrast was brutal. Alex, I can't take your money. Mabel, you're my sister. If you're facing eviction, we figure it out together. That's what family does. That night, surrounded by statements showing my secret fortune growing by thousands daily, I understood something painfully simple. Only one person in my family loved me without calculation: Alexander. I spent the next few weeks thinking I could tell everyone the truth and use the money to bring the family closer. Or I could build a new life that reflected the reality of who was really there when it mattered. The choice was easier than I expected. 3 months later, in January, I called my family to tell them I was moving to Denver for a new job opportunity. I told them I'd landed a position with a financial planning firm, offering a significant salary increase and better long-term prospects. All of that was technically true. I just didn't mention that I didn't need the job or the salary. I also didn't mention that I was buying a house in Denver and that Alexander would be moving with me. The conversation with Alex had happened months earlier, over Thanksgiving dinner at my apartment. I had cooked for the two of us because I was supposedly too broke to travel home, and he'd come to keep me company. That was the night I told him the truth. "You won how much?" he said, nearly dropping his fork. $57 million before taxes. About $34 million after. "And you've been sitting on this for 8 months. I wanted to understand some things before making changes, including who I could trust. I told him about the test, about the calls, about each response. That was a test, Mabel. I was ready to max my credit card for you. I know. And that's why you are the only person who will know about this money." He struggled with the idea of keeping it from Mom, Dad, and Claire.
What about them?
What about Mom and Dad? Claire?
What about them?
They made it clear, when I needed help, I was on my own. So I'm going to take care of myself. And you. Then I said something that changed both our lives forever. I don't want to be rich and alone.
I want to build something.
I want us to start a business. Together. The idea had been forming in my mind for months. A financial services firm built for working-class families, people overlooked by traditional wealth advisors. People like Alex. People like our parents used to be. We would combine wealth creation with compassion. Emergency loans. Planning. Education. Alex could run daily operations. I would handle strategy. We start with $5 million. If it works, we expand. He stared at me for a long moment. "You're serious?" "Completely. If the business didn't succeed, we would try something else." And Mom, Dad, and Claire, they didn't need to know about the business or where the funding came from. As far as they were concerned, I had landed a good job in Denver, and Alexander had decided to move with me to try something new. The move to Denver went smoothly. I bought a house in a nice, but not ostentatious, neighborhood, the kind of place a successful financial planner might afford without drawing attention. Alexander moved into the guest house behind the main property, and we began the painstaking process of setting up our business. For 6 months, we maintained the fiction that I was working for someone else while quietly building the infrastructure for our firm. Alex took courses in financial planning and business management. I obtained the necessary licenses and certifications. We developed relationships with attorneys, accountants, and other professionals who could help us serve our target clientele. By the time we officially launched True Path Wealth Management, we were ready to make a tangible impact. Our first year exceeded all expectations. We helped more than 200 families improve their financial situations, prevented dozens of foreclosures, and demonstrated that ethical financial services could be both profitable and socially beneficial. Alex turned out to be a natural. He connected effortlessly with clients who had previously felt intimidated or ignored by traditional financial advisors. He spoke their language, understood their challenges, and never made anyone feel judged for past mistakes. Within 18 months, he was earning more than he ever imagined, and doing it by helping people who reminded him of his own family background. Meanwhile, my relationship with Mom, Dad, and Claire continued largely as it had before, except with the buffer of geographical distance. We talked occasionally, exchanged holiday cards, and maintained the polite but superficial connection many adult siblings have with their families. They never asked about my financial situation, and I never volunteered information about the business. I think they assumed I was doing fine, comfortable, but not wealthy. the same middle-class life they had always expected me to achieve. Alex struggled with maintaining the secret. During family calls, when our parents mentioned money worries, or when Claire complained about the cost of her children's activities, he often flinched. He wanted to help them and couldn't understand why I seemed comfortable letting them struggle with problems I could solve effortlessly. It's not about the money, I explained to him during one of our evening conversations. It's about what the money represents. If I solve their problems outright, it changes our relationship forever. They'll wonder if I'm helping out of love or guilt. They'll always question whether they should feel grateful or resentful.
But they're still family. Are they, though?
When I needed help, they treated me like a burden. When I supposedly lost my job, they saw it as evidence of my failings, not a situation that required support. Why should their problems become my responsibility when mine weren't theirs? Alex could not argue with the logic, but emotionally, it was hard for him to watch our family struggle while we prospered in secret. The test came again, unexpectedly, 2 years after I had moved to Denver. It was a Tuesday evening in March, almost exactly 3 years after that fateful Powerball ticket. My mother called, her voice older, fragile than I remembered, carrying a desperation I had never heard before. "Mabel, I need to ask you something. I want you to know how hard this is for me." "What is it, Mom?" Dad had suffered another heart attack last week, bigger this time. He was going to be okay, but the doctors recommended surgery and our insurance wouldn't cover all of it. The out-of-pocket cost was around $40.
$42.
Less than my investments earned in a typical week, but apparently enough to create a genuine crisis for my parents. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I had no idea Dad was in such bad shape." "He didn't want to worry you," I said softly. "You know how he is about showing weakness. But we don't have 40 thou. We don't even have $10,000. The hospital wants a payment plan before they schedule surgery. Mabel, we have no one else to turn to." I had been expecting this moment, the point when my parents would need help badly enough to reach out, and I would have to decide how to respond. "What do you need from me, Mom?" I asked. "I know you're doing better now with your new job. Maybe you could help us with part of the cost." "Not all of it. Even $5,000 would make a huge difference." $5,000. 2 years earlier, they couldn't spare $3,000 to help me avoid supposed eviction. Now they were asking me for more than that. "Mom, I want to help Dad get the surgery he needs. Let me review my finances and see what I can do," I said calmly. She thanked me, relief flooding her voice. They didn't realize there was no real financial limit on what I could do. I hung up and called Alex immediately. "You're going to help them, right?" he said. "Of course. But the question is how much, and how to do it in a way that makes sense." "What do you mean?" "Well, I could write a check for $40,000 tomorrow and cover everything, but that would raise questions about where the money came from. Or I could contribute what they asked and let them handle the rest, which is probably what they expect anyway." Alex was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What if there's a third option?" "What kind of third option?" "What if the money came from someone else? Someone who had reason to help, but wasn't directly connected to our family?" I realized what he meant. An anonymous donor. It was elegant in its simplicity. Dad had worked at the same company for decades. Mom had volunteered at church for years. They had probably helped dozens of people over time, without expecting recognition. It wouldn't be unbelievable if someone wanted to return the favor. This way, I could solve their crisis without creating complicated family dynamics. They would receive the help they needed while maintaining their dignity, and I could honor my obligation without compromising the boundaries I had set. I handled the setup. By Friday, my parents received a certified letter from a law firm explaining that an anonymous benefactor had chosen to cover their medical expenses in recognition of their service to the community. They never knew it came from me or from Alex. That evening, Mom called, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Mabel, you will never believe what happened. Someone we don't even know paid for Dad's surgery. $40,000. That's incredible, Mom." He must be so relieved. He cried when I read the letter. I haven't seen him cry since his father died. He keeps saying he can't believe someone would do this for us. I listened quietly, knowing she felt the same overwhelming relief she might have felt if she'd known the gift came from me, but without the complicated mix of obligation, guilt, and suspicion. Claire's reaction was different. "I cannot believe someone just gave them $40,000, she said during our next call. "People don't do things like that anymore. Makes you wonder if they know who it really was and just aren't telling us." Alex reminded me that the legal arrangements were airtight. Even if someone tried to trace it, it would lead only to a legitimate charitable foundation. "And Claire," he added, "she's not actually suspicious. She's just jealous they got help that she didn't." He was right. Her subsequent comments always carried an undertone of resentment, as if she thought she or her family were equally deserving of the help. But our parents had received aid because they needed it, not because they deserved it more than anyone else. Over the next year, I continued making discreet donations, helping people close to me who were struggling. I assisted Alexander's old college roommate drowning in medical bills, a former coworker facing eviction, and even contributed to my old church to save a youth mentorship program that was about to be canceled due to lack of funding. Each time, I felt the quiet satisfaction of resolving serious problems for others without the complications that come with known gifts. The recipients maintained their dignity, and I could take joy in doing good while avoiding awkward gratitude, obligations, or strained relationships. But soon, I began to notice something unexpected about wealth. The sheer power to erase someone's problems was intoxicating. Knowing that a single phone call could wipe away a worry that had been haunting someone for months gave me a strange sense of control and a subtle thrill. The more I helped, the more I wanted to help. The more lives I improved, the more I started scanning the world around me for struggles I could fix. I was developing a wealthy person's burden, one I hadn't anticipated, the constant feeling that if I could help, I must help. Jake was the first to notice the change. "You're starting to act like you think you're God," he said one evening over dinner. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You're trying to fix everyone's problems with money. That's not how life works. Some lessons are meant to be learned the hard way. You can't just write a check for every hardship you see." "Why not?" I shot back. "If I can help, why shouldn't I?" "Because help without context isn't always helpful," he explained. "Solving people's struggles for them doesn't make them stronger or more capable. And you're not responsible for fixing everything broken in the world." It stung, but I had to admit he was right. I realized I had begun to see my wealth as a tool to sculpt the world I wanted, rather than a resource to respond thoughtfully to specific crises. After that conversation, I scaled back the anonymous donations and refocused on building our business and creating sustainable wealth that could support people actively working to improve their own situations. Instead of simply solving problems, we began teaching people to solve them for themselves. The firm flourished. By the third year, we had helped over 1,000 families improve their finances, expanded into 3 additional cities, and Jake became a respected advisor in Denver. His ability to connect with clients overlooked by traditional firms was remarkable. And I had built a meaningful life that the lottery alone could never have guaranteed, a life reflecting my values, using wealth responsibly, and making a tangible impact on the community. But the secret of my winnings remained intact, even with my parents and Claire. That secrecy had become part of my identity, allowing me to act without fear of judgment or altered family dynamics. It also let me continue testing character in quiet ways, without anyone knowing they were being tested. That test came again 4 years after the move to Denver, when Claire called about her eldest daughter's college expenses. "Mabel, I need to ask for your help, and I hope you know how hard this is for me," she said. Emma had been accepted to Stanford, Claire explained, and despite financial aid, the out-of-pocket expenses totaled almost $35,000 per year to $140,000 over 4 years. It was a massive sum for her family, but a fraction of what our investments earned each month. "I know your business is doing well, Mabel," Claire said, "and I was hoping you could help with some of Emma's tuition. Even $12,000 would make a huge difference." It was exactly the kind of partial solution that let Claire feel she had done everything possible while still forcing her to cover the bulk of the cost herself. I promised I would consider it. Instead of simply giving the money, We created a scholarship through our charitable foundation for middle-class students accepted to prestigious universities, but unable to afford full tuition. Emma became one of the first recipients, receiving a 4-year scholarship covering tuition and living expenses entirely. Over the next year, I continued making discreet donations, helping people close to me who were struggling. I assisted Alexander's old college roommate drowning in medical bills, a former coworker facing eviction, and even contributed to my old church to save a youth mentorship program that was about to be canceled due to lack of funding. Each time, I felt the quiet satisfaction of resolving serious problems for others without the complications that come with known gifts. The recipients maintained their dignity, and I could take joy in doing good while avoiding awkward gratitude, obligations, or strained relationships. But soon, I began to notice something unexpected about wealth. The sheer power to erase someone's problems was intoxicating. Knowing that a single phone call could wipe away a worry that had been haunting someone for months gave me a strange sense of control and a subtle thrill. The more I helped, the more I wanted to help. The more lives I improved, the more I started scanning the world around me for struggles I could fix. I was developing a wealthy person's burden, one I hadn't anticipated, the constant feeling that if I could help, I must help. Jake was the first to notice the change. "You're starting to act like you think you're God," he said one evening over dinner. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You're trying to fix everyone's problems with money. That's not how life works. Some lessons are meant to be learned the hard way. You can't just write a check for every hardship you see." "Why not?" I shot back. "If I can help, why shouldn't I?" "Because help without context isn't always helpful," he explained. "Solving people's struggles for them doesn't make them stronger or more capable. And you're not responsible for fixing everything broken in the world." It stung, but I had to admit he was right. I realized I had begun to see my wealth as a tool to sculpt the world I wanted, rather than a resource to respond thoughtfully to specific crises. After that conversation, I scaled back the anonymous donations and refocused on building our business and creating sustainable wealth that could support people actively working to improve their own situations. Instead of simply solving problems, we began teaching people to solve them for themselves. The firm flourished. By the 3rd year, we had helped over 1,000 families improve their finances, expanded into 3 additional cities, and Jake became a respected advisor in Denver. His ability to connect with clients overlooked by traditional firms was remarkable. And I had built a meaningful life that the lottery alone could never have guaranteed, a life reflecting my values, using wealth responsibly, and making a tangible impact on the community. But the secret of my winnings remained intact, even with my parents and Claire. That secrecy had become part of my identity, allowing me to act without fear of judgment or altered family dynamics. It also let me continue testing character in quiet ways, without anyone knowing they were being tested. That test came again 4 years after the move to Denver, when Claire called about her eldest daughter's college expenses. "Mabel, I need to ask for your help, and I hope you know how hard this is for me," she said. Emma had been accepted to Stanford, Claire explained, and despite financial aid, the out-of-pocket expenses totaled almost $35,000 per year to $140,000 over 4 years. It was a massive sum for her family, but a fraction of what our investments earned each month. "I know your business is doing well, Mabel," Claire said, "and I was hoping you could help with some of Emma's tuition. Even $12,000 would make a huge difference." It was exactly the kind of partial solution that let Claire feel she had done everything possible while still forcing her to cover the bulk of the cost herself. I promised I would consider it. Instead of simply giving the money, we created a scholarship through our charitable foundation for middle-class students accepted to prestigious universities but unable to afford full tuition. Emma became one of the first recipients, receiving a 4-year scholarship covering tuition and living expenses entirely. When Claire called to share the news, her voice was filled with amazement and gratitude, tinged with confusion. "It's like someone knew exactly what we needed and made it happen," she said. "It's incredible." I smiled quietly. The anonymous donation strategy worked again, helping those in need without altering relationships or creating obligations, while letting me honor family and friends thoughtfully. Over time, Claire seemed less stressed about money, more optimistic about her family's future, and genuinely interested in maintaining stronger connections with extended family, all without ever knowing the full story. She started calling more often, visiting Denver occasionally, and including Jake and me in family discussions about holidays and special occasions. But I also noticed that she never directly thanked me for. Over time, Claire began calling more often, visiting Denver occasionally, and including Alexander and me in family conversations about holidays and special occasions. Yet I noticed she never directly thanked me for offering to help with Emma's tuition. Even after the scholarship had fully covered the costs, she never acknowledged that I had been willing to contribute $12,000 toward her daughter's education. It was as if my offer had never existed, or as if she hadn't expected it to be serious. That realization revealed something important about how my family perceived me. They didn't see me as someone capable of solving major financial challenges. To them, I might contribute small amounts to big problems but not actually fix them. They were unaware of my wealth, so they couldn't grasp the irony. Meanwhile, they were quietly receiving anonymous donations worth hundreds of thousands from the very sibling they assumed couldn't help with mere thousands. The contrast between perception and reality became almost comical rather than painful. 5 years after moving to Denver, I made a decision that even surprised Alexander. I would reveal the truth about my lottery winnings to my family. Not for gratitude or recognition, and not out of guilt, but to see how they would react to learning that the financial problems they faced could have been solved in an instant by someone they had dismissed as powerless. I wanted them to understand the lesson I had been teaching about family loyalty, support, and character.